What is happening, people? Welcome back to the channel. KG is back. It is time for the Leeds United season review 23-24. And I have with me our old compadre, the debrief regular, the debrief creator, I should say, Conor from One Leeds FC. How you doing, man?
All good, man. All good. I've got you on my other window there, so just playing you in the background. I was like, "Is KG just got off on playback here? What's going on?"
Listen, I'm everywhere, man. I'm omnipresent, man. I'm all over the gaff.
I'm good, mate. This has been well overdue, and I'm completely excited to get into this with a guy who I've got a hell of a lot of respect for, and his opinions are opinions of which I align with. So it's gonna be a good one, mate. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, man. Look, obviously, it's a couple days after the player final, and everyone saw the watch long and the match reaction. It's disappointing to get to the point we got to and not even score a goal. I mean, there's just so many things in regards to that game. But how are you feeling after that playoff final now, kind of with it being a couple days later?
Yeah, do you know what, KG? It's a weird one. And I'd love to get your thoughts and your subscribers' thoughts as well. But I don't think weirdly, it didn't hurt as much as the Bielsa derby loss. I don't know if it was just because that was just such a wild season. I'm not sure, and we were kind of always on the edge. This one was a little bit more, I felt personally, I was saying on my channel that I felt it was going to go either way. And they'd obviously beaten us twice, but our sort of only sort of modicum of comfort going into that, KG, was the fact that we'd beaten Norwich 4-0. And it was unbelievable. But me and you were chatting on WhatsApp, and I was very, very apprehensive going into it. Obviously, you know, you're still full of hope, aren't you? But I just looked at it and I thought, this guy switched up to a 3 at the back against us in the last game. He clearly feels exceptionally confident up against Leeds because he did that off the back of 3 straight losses for Southampton. Switched up formations against Leeds. And in the first game against them, they were a back 4. Second game against us, they were a back 3. And in both games, it was the exact same game plan. So I think how I look at it now, Cage, is I'm really disappointed at the fact that it was still a playoff final, 1 game away from the Premier League. And we looked the exact same after 10 days rest as we did in that last game of the season at Ellen Road. So still disappointed, mate. But yeah, maybe not as weirdly disappointed because it was expected, I think.
No, I understand now. The Derby one, it took me about 2 weeks to get over.
Yeah.
And I'm being legitimately serious about that. I was absolutely devastated with that loss. This one was more of it was just disappointment how we approached the game. Obviously, we saw that he used the same lineup, and we will speak about Daniel Farke, his pros and cons as the video goes on. But speaking about the final itself, when we lined up the same against Norwich, even though we know that formation hadn't worked against Southampton twice, I thought maybe when we're in possession, Gray would move into the midfield, just help out Kamara and Gruev. And there was no such thing. It was legit just the same formation that we had against them in previous games, which clearly didn't work. And we saw a couple times again. I mean, Gruev in particular, and I don't want to, dig him out, but he lost Smallbone at the game at Ellen Road where he just stopped running. And in this one, he was pointing at somebody else to cover. He was pointing at someone else to cover Adam Armstrong instead of like clattering Smallbone. At least get a yellow, do something. But he's pointing to the defenders like, Armstrong. And like, no. Go to Smallbone and shut that down. And then Armstrong. And that's the most disappointing thing. The goal that they got, we've seen it through the season. I mean, this is a whole season thing. We never get those kind of goals where we just threw people's defense and a one-on-one against the keeper. We've seen consistently with this team, and it was really prevalent in the final. Pass. Even if there's a half a lane, oh no, it's not clear. Pass it again. And they just get one, score, and that is it. Game over, and we are in the championship for another season.
Yeah, I agree, mate. And as well, KG, I feel like we've seen that Armstrong goal 3 times as well. We've seen the same goal, and it's him peeling off the centre back, it's getting in between the full back and the centre back, and doing the exact same thing, beating the offside trap. That first goal, well, the only goal of the game was kamikaze. It was kamikaze defending. I completely agree with you. Ampadu pointing, rolled on out of position, Gruev pointing, as you quite rightly said, just complete overload in the midfield. And I did think throughout the game, KG, for the 3rd game in a row, they just dominated the midfield. They just dominated it. And I think I've always said in football, you win the midfield battle and you win the game. I was a little bit conflicted going into the game. So I thought, do you play a 4-2-3-1 where you've been so good against Norwich, and do you almost just try and, play to the best of your ability through the formation that has worked time and time again? But it also hasn't worked. And we've seen a game like that probably 10 or 11 times this season. And another thing to bear in mind is the fact that it's not just Southampton who've done that. It's a lot of the bottom six sides who've done that as well. Gone to a back five, tried to hit us on the counter attack, being sort of clinical in certain situations, and Leeds have really struggled. So it's not just been the tops that, Southampton being that top side that we struggled against with those sort of low blocks, mid blocks. It has been against, the poor sides as well. And I think that was my biggest disappointment. It was going into the game and maybe not being Daniel Farke, not being pragmatic, changing to a 3 at points when he's seen it going wrong. I was mentioning to you, mate, on the just off air there, that Joe Aribo was doubling up on Archie Gray. There was such a fluidity with their midfield, and Archie's doing that to the bench inside 15 minutes, and that's something that the cameras won't pick up on the TV. But he was completely confused as to who to go, where to go, what do I do, who do I pick up? Nobody's helping me. If Joe Aribo's coming towards me, does that mean Kamara has to come all the way back and mark Joe Aribo? I mean, that's something for the manager to figure out, really. And like you said, it was just it looked disarray when they were on the attack. And I don't know about you, but sort of any time Taylor Howard-Bellis had the ball, or just one of their centre-backs, I felt that it was just a pass through to Aribo and Smallbone, and they were almost in. It felt like they were in. It was just one decision away from getting the correct thing, really.
Yeah, every time they went forward, it looked really dangerous. Whereas we get to a certain point, and people would have heard this through match reactions before, where we get to a certain point on the pitch, and then it's a pass back to Kamara, which inevitably means a pass back to somebody else. And then, Firpo at times, or Somerville, and we'll get into Somerville in regards to his season, but again, double, tripled up at times. And Firpo was nowhere to be seen on the overlap. And again, this might not even be on Firpo. As I say, with players are the mirror of their managers.
Yeah.
So if he wanted him to overlap, guess what? Farke would have said, "Oi, help out Somerville when he's being doubled up." And we saw that with Southampton when Ryan Fraser went forward that time, and he got a crossing on the byline. We didn't do any of that. We didn't test out Bednarek enough. We certainly didn't test out Alex McCarthy enough, who was a brilliant goalkeeper back in the day. But if you get shots at him, you've got to expect that he may concede one or two, which he has done in previous weeks as well. But we didn't do anything near enough.
And KG, they were all absolutely terrified of Alex McCarthy before the playoff campaign. They were all absolutely terrified of him. And like you said, I literally can't remember. I mean, obviously hitting the crossbar, I don't think's a shot on target, is it? I don't think that.
No, Gnonto, no, it's not a shot on target when it hits the bar. But Gnonto, in the first 10 minutes when we were on fire and they looked a bit nervous and we didn't capitalize, it was Gnonto when he ran through a couple of players, then had a weak left foot shot that just rolled into McCarthy. But other than that, Dan James aside.
KG, can I ask you as well? Like, 'cause I sort of make this point, and I've made this point. I feel like, I'm not saying it's unique or anything, but I've not heard it echoed a lot, and I think a lot of the subscribers are maybe getting onto it a little bit. Some of them, disagree, agree. You might do the same, but I think we've been killed a lot post international break in the midfield, and I don't know if this is where you want to go with it, mate. I'm just trying to put a point across here, but Gruev. So I play, and I know you've played the game as well. I played the game so in midfield, and look, it's a completely different standard, all this sort of stuff. But I was never ever encouraged to have sort of a closed body approach in the midfield. It was always to have almost like a half-bodied approach, willing to go to close your body off if someone's pressing you, or open your body out. And I just feel all the time when Gruev sort of receives the ball, it's a closed body approach, and I feel like it only really gives him three options: Ilan Melie and the two centre backs. And I feel in that game, once again, you saw this closed body approach, and I think it's risk averse. I think it's completely risk averse, and I feel like that's also emphasised, KG, by the fact all we do is short passes. It's 5-yard passes when you can literally have 1v1 situations here. We could have had Kamara spreading the ball out to Gnonto, and it could have been Gnonto versus Ryan Manning or Ryan Fraser. And that, for me, is a real way of gaining success. It's an avenue for success, but we move the ball so slow, and the tempo is so slow to get into that final transition and phase, that it's easy to defend against. So easy.
Yeah. I mean, in regards to Gruev, I mean, before his injury and before that dreaded international break, he was doing all right. Like, he was doing fine. And there was, when he first broke into the team, because it did take him a while. And again, that's something we'll speak about in a bit when it comes to players in this team. But it took him a while to get involved. But out of the midfielders that we had, he was the one that was doing the most in terms of diagonals. Now that isn't saying a lot. The bar is very low, when it comes to our midfielders, but he was doing the most. And then all of a sudden it stopped. And you just go back to a little comment Farke made about Jorginho, and again, two different players, but earlier in the season where Jorginho was taking out players and playing with a smile on his face, and twice Farke told him, "Hey, you're doing well, but can you just put a lid on it a little?" He's trying to stifle a bit of the creativity out of Jorginho. It felt at the
Mm,
time, and you just wonder with Gruev, although the long balls were few and far between, they were still there with that guy. You just wonder if maybe Farke just said, "Hey, just lay off the easier pass. Let's get it up to the front four and let them do what they have to do." Because we've seen, and again, we'll speak about this in a bit, but no. We're not going to go there yet. We're not going to go there yet. But I just feel with Farke, you say risk averse. I feel that's his method, just judging by the way that he sets up his teams. Look at our midfielders. We don't have one, not one, that does late arrivals into the box to hit it one time and score a goal. And that's evident with the numbers. Not one of our midfielders scored a goal in
mm.
regular season. Took Gruev a free kick in the Norwich game to get that duck off.
That
You know
can't
what I
that
mean?
can't that can't have happened in top 4, top 6 football in the Championship for that's gotta be nigh on a record, KG, for your
Yeah,
entire midfield.
I don't have the stats, but I was thinking of this myself. It would be interesting to know in total how many shots Kamara, Gruev, and I'll even stick Gray in there at times, and
Yeah.
Amp had as midfielders, and it can't be that many. Connor, I remember it near the start of the season. Ampadu was trying his best from long range, and they were just going in the stands. But other than that, I don't remember these guys actually shoot. I mean, you actually see Kamara; he'll be in around the penalty area, and he's trying all the things to not shoot.
Well, it
He
happened it happened it happened 3 times, didn't it, at Wembley? It's almost like, do you think Southampton have almost just when he's got the ball on the edge of the box, they'll just sort of almost like double up on Somerville instead and not even try like effectively really quickly close him down because I've never seen anything KG, I've never seen anything like it. I have never seen he will not strike a ball. He
he
won't do
doesn't.
it.
He doesn't shoot. Like, no, it's not even being extra or nothing. It's not hyperbole. He does not shoot. And we saw it numerous times. But you know what? Let's go with the I mean, we've given, I'm sure Connor's given his full thoughts on the playoff final.
Yeah.
I've given my thoughts, but the season as it comes. Obviously, at the start of the year, Daniel Farke's appointed in the summer. And we're going through a bit of turmoil. We're seeing Southampton and Leicester sell their jewels of their crowns for 40 million, 60 million in Lavia. And we're having players leave on loan because of the previous regime. So that is a difficult start. But you want to go into the positives of Farke first of all, before we speak about things that went wrong. One of the things I felt was really well handled was the Gnonto situation,
Mm.
especially at a football club like ours, where the fans are very loud, very passionate. Oh, you disrespect the badge, that is it for you. I felt Daniel Farke absolutely got it right, and I said so at the time. This is Gnonto, who at the time was 19, I think, and he has his agent is Zaniolo's agent. And
Mm.
if you know him, and I know a guy that has worked with this guy before, he's always looking for a move for his client. You look at Zaniolo; he played for I think 3 teams last season, and he's at Villa now on loan, and he'll probably move again come the summer. And it was just bad advice. And I likened it to Bobby Duncan, if people remember him, who used to be a youngster at Liverpool, badly advised by his agent, went to Fiorentina. I don't know where Bobby Duncan is now. And you've seen Gnonto now talk about it with regret and how the team helped him back in and Farke. And I just felt he handled that situation brilliantly because I feel under the previous ownership and the weak managers that we probably would have had that would have followed the more passion merchancy fans, Gnonto would have been on the first thing smoking back to Italy or something.
Yeah, you're completely right. I've said the exact same thing, mate. I think that is one of his massive tick points. But not even to just throw him back in immediately as well. To almost treat him. It was almost like fatherly figure-esque, wasn't it? It was
Yeah,
like, no, you've made a big mistake. You've actively said that you want to leave the club. You've tried to pursue your way out. Your agent's dug his heels in. You've made it a very difficult period for the club. And
yeah,
I'm going to almost be the custodian here who tells you exactly what's going on. You don't just get back in because you think you're better than you are. And I think I think the beautiful thing about it, KG, was it was almost like the perfect blend, because then you got Dan James coming in, and Dan James at that point, we have to say, took a. I mean, me and you have our thoughts on Dan James. I think in terms of his ceiling, but his form was through the roof, absolutely through the roof. And I think that was almost the perfect blend and timing for what happened with Gnonto, because he probably thought to himself, "Oh, bloody hell, well, if I don't perform this season, then I'm not going to get that lucrative move at the end of the season, especially if this guy in front of me is getting assists and scoring most weeks." So yeah, I completely agreed. I think he did handle that really, really well. And that's probably one of, if not the biggest tick point this season for Farke, I think.
Yeah, and just on Dan James, I mean, we've both spoken about it before, but I just felt, and I said it at the start of the season, that this is his level.
Yeah.
It's quite telling as well. Farke did say in a few of his interviews, Dan James at this level as well. So maybe he thinks the same thing. But Dan James in this division is an absolute terror, and we know in this division, pace, the defenders aren't as intelligent as Premier League defenders. That's just a fact. And the way that he was playing, it kept out Gnonto, which was only a good thing for us, because it meant that Dan James was cooking on the pitch. Meanwhile, we got a hungry Gnonto just waiting to atone for his errors, hungry to make an impression. And we saw that in the latter half of the year, where Gnonto just came in, and you saw, just the difference in the way that both he and James play. Gnonto is more the stylish one. Just as well, by the way, there's a bit of a hindsight in terms of, because Dan James came on in the playoff final and did well, that he should have started. But I counter that with, if he had dropped Gnonto and we still lost, the people would have then said, how can he drop Gnonto after he did so well against Norwich in the 4-0? Put that one on the plate for Piroe, in stuff. So that's hindsight for me in terms of people saying James should have started. And he's only just come back from injury too. And like a lot of the players, he fell off a cliff after the international break. And of course, he's the one that missed the decisive penalty for Wales. But in terms of Leeds, he was fantastic for us this season. And yeah, Daniel Farke with Gnonto, I feel was a big plus. Another plus I felt with Daniel Farke, and there's a minus to this as well, what you have to speak about. But the plus was the way he handled Charlie Creswell after a very public spat. His dad coming out saying, "Yeah, I wish he'd play more." Farke then firing back saying, "Well, he's not training well." And Farke, you could tell that press conference he was saying to Richard Creswell and Charlie, buck up your ideas. Don't publicly call for me if he's not doing the work. He mends that relationship. And I thought at the time, because we did need a centre back, I thought he handled that well. What did you think in regards to that?
Yeah, I was split at the time, KG. I have to say I was a little bit split. I thought to myself, obviously we're talking about it with hindsight now and 2020 vision on it. But yeah, I think at the time I was a little bit like, because I think prior he'd said something, and I don't think Charlie had said so. He was asked in the press conference, what we almost going to do with Pascal Struijk. Obviously, he's out now. Who comes in? And he mentioned something about Cresswell. And I think that almost triggered his dad to say something, and then there was a response from Farke. I think that's how it sort of chronologically worked. But I think just on the handling of the situation, once again, KG, completely agree. I have my thoughts over, I mean, Ipswich inquiring for him, Sunderland inquiring for him, and then he's cold for the entire season at Leeds United.
That's the bad part.
And that's the huge part. It's like, oh, he's cold at Leeds. Well, why not just let him go then? Why not just let him go? Because we won't get our best midfielder back into midfield, who may have made a difference at the weekend with a little bit of midfield.
Hold on.
Sorry.
That's for the count. That's for the counter to these pros. Obviously, the other pro, which Daniel Farke even said after the game that we lost in the playoff final, which had no bearing on the playoff final. He even mentioned it in this one, which he's very proud of, the 90 points. Considering the start that we had, the difficult start. I know, yeah, big trophy. Hey, 90 points. Hey. He's very proud of that.
Yeah.
In regards to where we started, right? Oh man, it's tough. It's tough. Are you proud of the whole 90 points thing? I'm asking you because I don't know what you feel in regards to that. Do you feel that is a worthy of a success, especially mentioned after a playoff loss?
God,
It's
no,
tough, isn't it?
no, I don't know. I don't get the team we've got. I still think maybe there's a little bit more balance in Southampton and Leicester's side. But Ipswich have come from nowhere, accumulated 200 points in 2 seasons. Brilliant job with McKenna, but we still finished behind them. They're the cold, hard, objective facts. We
Mhm.
still finished behind them. We did the double on them. It doesn't matter. We still finished that behind them. We got 90 points. Like, how far do we go down here? If we've got 88, 87, 86, are we still calling this like an unbelievable season? Where's the cutoff point? I just think 90 points is you look at the season, you stand back and look at it, a bit of a tumultuous period at the start. But the worst period was when it mattered, which was obviously post-international break. So, no, I don't see 90 points as like an overarching, unbelievable success. We ultimately failed when it mattered.
Lovely, agree. And listen, if there's any more positives in regard to Farke, I'll keep an eye on the chat, and if we bring one up, we'll do that. But
Yeah.
obviously, we have to speak about the more disappointing aspects of the season because ultimately, like you say, and like I've said before, we have failed. You can't look at the league that it is, aside from the top four, where Ipswich were unbelievable, and mostly in part to their coach, which is evident. And another thing as well in regards to Farke, I think it's very telling at the time that we do this live. Maresca's on his way to Chelsea. Kieran McKenna is being tied down to a big contract amidst Brighton and Man United interest. Russell Martin at one point was linked with a job as well. I think he was linked with Palace before they got Glasner.
Yeah, it was
The
Palace.
only
Yeah.
person that isn't being linked out of this four that I've seen is Daniel Farke, and I do think that is very telling when it comes to this, because I think even if Ipswich hadn't gone up, the job McKenna's done, he would have still been linked with the Brightons of the Premier League.
Yeah,
Uh,
and mate, even you're getting Liam Rossini linked with Brighton. This is what
yes,
we're talking about. So
yeah, because it does have to. You do have to look at it, and again, looking at the league, apart from the top four, it's a bad league. It's a terrible league, and the players that we have at this point, they should have more than done the job in order to get promoted this season, 100%. And you could say whether it's automatic or through the playoffs, either way of those, either one of those options, it should have been done. So essentially, Ipswich have taken the place of us because we weren't as good as that team, as well as Southampton, as well as Leicester. But more importantly, if you're saying that Southampton, Leicester have got better squads, there's an argument. But Ipswich certainly do not have a better squad than Leeds United, but they were a better team. And that's where I think we're going to be next season. And we'll go into the pros and cons of keeping Farke, but we may have less talent. Like we're not going to get another Somerville if Somerville's to go, but maybe there'll be more complete profiles around the team that will enable us to go up automatically next season.
Yeah, well, he's already spoken about. I mean, he mentioned this, didn't he? And me and you, I think, really, really listened to his press conferences. I'm a bit of a stickler for wording things in the right way, and
Same here.
I do really, really listen to Daniel Farke, and it's fascinating. I thought when we were coming into a critical point that, and I think it was before Ipswich's game against Huddersfield, and he started speaking about almost like the glamour midfield of Sam Morsy and Massimo Luongo was, and
Oh,
talking about experience and talking about how we lack that. Well, we did have a transfer window to rectify that. If you wanted experience, and there is experience out there for good value, we all know that. Sam
yeah.
Morsy and Massimo Luongo as profiles are not better at all than our midfield, but that blend is something that they definitely had. But yeah, I think he was always sort of loaded with a few excuses. I think Daniel Farke, and me and you have spoken about that off air, and yeah, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how we shape up next year, KG. Because I'm expecting I mean, we were the second youngest squad in the division this year. We came up against the oldest squad in the division at the weekend, and I think experience at the weekend was completely prevalent. But it's interesting what you were saying about Somerville there, and what you were saying about other profiles. We came down, and Dortmund were interested in Rutter for 29 million. Liverpool were looking at Somerville. Look, Southampton have got a good side, but you don't see any of their better players being linked to moves like that.
No.
It's not been. So I think that's the gauge right now. That's the measure. It's like, look at some of our top players and the clubs that they were linked at in comparison to even some of these other clubs that have done better than us this season.
Yeah, you only have to look at Archie Gray, and we know the big interest from Liverpool. Dortmund is another one that's interesting. Even there was whispers of Real Madrid looking at him as well. And you look at that, you look at Somerville, you look at Gnonto, and let's take Somerville for instance. Liverpool again, big interest from Liverpool. This isn't like Everton, with all due respect. It's not Palace. It's not one of the bottom of the table Premier League. I think Palace finished 10th, but you know what I'm saying. These are like top clubs that are caught in our players. there isn't the same at other teams. Like Southampton, I look at their team, maybe Carl Walker-Peters would have been scouted by Everton, or something like that. His days of being linked with Arsenal have been long gone. We have the quality in this team. So it was never about not having players. And I do think it's, again, hindsight in there talking. We
Yeah.
could have done with more experience. But at the same time, what I will say is that he does have experience on the books, but it's just not very good experience. And that's essentially what he's saying. Because if he really did want more experience, he had Cooper there. But we saw what happened in the Watford game. And he probably thought, oh no, not again, Liam. I cannot do this again. He probably said, no, no, no. And also he had Ailing. But again, revisionist is coming now because we've seen Ailing. He's racked up assists with Middlesbrough. But once again, people, I give you the cold hard truth. Middlesbrough is not Leeds United. And we saw how Luke Ayling was playing for Leeds United, even in the Championship. It wasn't good enough. Look, there was a game where Joe Rodon got sent off because he was legitimately doing the work of him and Luke Ayling. He was centre back and right back. And what was Joe Rodon's reward for when he came back? He got benched against Southampton. And those are things where Farke, for me, loses me at times. Because Joe Rodon was legitimately, I want everyone to go back to that game where he got sent off. He was working the right back and centre back role.
And then we went into the Southampton game at St Mary's when they were literally on the precipice of firing Russell Martin at that point.
Yeah.
I think if we'd have beaten in that game, that'd have been the end. And we had Byram, Cooper, Strauch, and Shackleton as a back four, going up against Shea Adams and Adam Armstrong. It was a recipe for disaster. And maybe at that point, he just thought, I don't know, was he a little bit cocky at that point? Did he think he'd be able to almost, I don't know, sort of rotate a little bit and go into this game against a former sort of, I don't know how you put it, a former pupil, yeah, and school him a little bit. I don't know, maybe there's a little bit of arrogance there. Who knows?
Well, Russell Martin won that 3 times this season.
He did.
Unbelievable. But in regards to handling things poorly as well. Now, listen, Jed Spence is somebody who, especially after he left, all of a sudden, by the way, Conor, and you're a journalist, so you'll know, all of a sudden there were stories about him being late and everything else like that. But what I will tell you guys, and this can't be debated, is that a lot of footballers are late. If you think Jed Spence was the only person in the whole squad that was turning up late, well, I like what you're drinking. But what I will say, and you will know this, Conor, when players sign for a club, especially when they're coming down the league, they're promised certain things. So Jed Spence would have signed to be a right back at this football club. And because we didn't do our jobs in the summer recruiting a left back, and Firpo was out at the time, he was made to play left back when he came back from injury. And obviously Jed wasn't happy about that. And he made that clear. And obviously Farke didn't like that. But again, that was poor handling of a player in this division, especially, is a head and shoulders above everybody else when it comes to right backs. Probably Pereira, James Justin at Leicester. There's an argument there. But he is a diamond. He's a game changer. And we saw that in just little bits of when he played for us. If he's not there on the pitch against Sheffield Wednesday, we probably lose that game 1-0.
Yeah, you're completely right. I was a big advocate for Jed. I was a massive. I sort of backed it till the end, really, and I wouldn't sort of flicker with my opinion on it. It was really badly managed. He got a lot of flack. He got a lot of stick for, I don't really know what, to be honest. It was a couple of maybe average performances, but like you said, Cage, I think he played like 1 game or 2 games at right back, not maybe 1 full game, and then a sub appearance at right back. It was shocking that he wasn't given any form of chance. We've seen that throughout the season with many players, which I'm sure we'll get onto, but putting him left back, I agree. It sort of harks me back to the days, and obviously it was a little bit different, but obviously when Eddie signed under Bielsa, and guarantee Eddie would have come in with assurances, and then obviously that didn't work out, and Bamford got the nod
And that's why he left. That's why he left when the January window opened,
and that's why he left. Yeah, you bang on. And I think that Jed will have come with certain assurances. There'll have been a fair few clubs in for his signature, offering him probably what he wanted. He's come to Leeds. I completely understood the frustration. You'd have been frustrated with that. Not really been able to show off your qualities. We know he's almost a right wing back, and I think we said it. you know, you've said it on your stream, I said it on my stream. When we got Jed Spence, I was genuinely looking at that and going, wow, what a signing. Now, Conor Roberts was someone as well who I looked at, and obviously we'll get onto that cage and stuff like that. But I did look at it and thought, yep, good signing. But I just think Jed Spence has just that next level, to be quite honest with you. So yeah, that was disappointing how that was handled.
Yeah, he does. I mean, there's, people saying that he must be a bad apple. Well, Genoa have had no problems with him. And Nottingham Forest didn't. He's a bit of a maverick. I will admit that. I know that, but he's not. It's just that he's not a robot, which I know a lot of football players seem to be these days. He's not one of those. So yeah, he does believe in his own ability, which again is a sin to a lot of this fan base. He's too cocky. Even seen it with Somerville this year, Connor.
Oh yeah,
he that himself when he scores. Yeah, but he also jumps into the crowd and everything else like that. I think people, if a player just doesn't look, as humble and as poor as Jack Harrison type, they think that he's over cocky when
mate, let's not forget at the end the slander Rafinha was getting. The
yes,
slander
yeah,
Rafinha was getting, and then we were told at the end, we're coming on and saying, especially even on the debrief, it's literally Rafinha keeping us up, and he did keep us up. But then fans afterwards, it's revisionism. No, it was Harrison. Harrison kept us in the division. What are we talking about? I know Harrison played his part, but we seem to have these scapegoats when we know these players are about to go. It's happened with
yeah,
Rafinha,
copium.
and it's happening. You can see it on social media right now. It's happening right now with
Mhm.
Somerville, which is mental.
Yeah. We've seen it with Raf. I mean, I've mentioned it on my channel before. It's like when they know a player is above the level that we are, and we know that we're likely to lose them. It's like, well, we'll cope anyway.
Yeah.
We'll someone just as good who will do more. Somerville's numbers and in comparison, because I've seen a few of the suggestions that people say he's got more goals and assists than some of the two of the suggestions in time, like Ilias Chair and people impressed with Mavidi from Leicester.
Mm.
Those two combined, I don't even think get to the numbers at Somerville, and if they do, it's just over. So that's how good that he has been. And again, we'll talk about this is about Farke. So speaking of Somerville, speaking of Jorginho, I don't know about you, but when I've watched the games this season, and even when we went through that unbelievable run, that is a plus as well. The unbelievable unbeaten run we went through from the start of 2024. But a lot of the play was through Somerville, was through Jorginho, and that's it. Hope for the best with those two. What Jorginho eventually, after losing it 8, 10 times a game, is eventually going to get you through with a pass in the 70+ minute and will break through. Somerville's eventually going to dance around two players and put one in the far corner. Other than that, did you see any other game plan? Oh, apart from when we're losing and then in the 83rd, 84th minute, throw on all the attackers. Am I wrong in that, or did you see anything different?
No, you're completely right. The only time I saw anything different was probably when we went to Norwich 4-3-3, and we weren't. It didn't really look like we were interested in scoring a goal. To be honest, it just looked like we were sort of sat back and looking to defend and get out of there with a point. No real ambition to win, and that was obviously a tactic. But throughout the season, yeah, the build up, mate. I mean, what's startling to me is with Rutter, how he has to drag himself back 50 yards at points when they're playing a 4-2-3-1 and he's Cam. How he has to drag himself 40 or 50 yards back into his own half at points to drag Leeds up the pitch
Yeah,
because the midfield can't do what Rutter can do. They can't bypass a press. They can't run with the ball. They can't dribble like he does. And then Rutter will simultaneously pass the ball to Somerville or whatever. Somerville will get the ball in his own half. And then take on 3 or 4 men and glide past them, similar to what we used to literally have with Rafinha. The build-up
yeah,
was through Rafinha. It's the same thing. So I agree with you. And look, comes back to the question, KG, of is this all about tactical prowess, managerial sort of astuteness, or does this come back to the question of has this guy landed with two of the probable best players the championship will have ever seen in terms of talent, ceiling, potential, ability, and stuff like that? That is the question. But when you are seeing everything, you are completely correct to go through Rutter and Somerville. Everything, absolutely everything. I worry when those two players might be completely taken out of it.
yeah. And it's just in regards to the style of play. I mean, another time I did remember it actually because this is how few and far between it is. Was in the game where we beat Middlesbrough 4-3 when we allowed Middlesbrough to have the ball in the second half and then we just
Mm,
broke them and killed them on the
mm.
counter attack because That's what we have with the quality. Middlesbrough looked the better team, but our counter attack and the quality that we have won us the game.
Yeah.
So that I did see something different there, but that's what I'm saying. You can pick out moments and things like that where it's like, okay, that's when we play different, and it shouldn't be like that. Like you mentioned near the start for the Southampton game, Norwich is different. We should have set up differently for Southampton. But in regards to another thing that was bad, we spoke about the positive to Creswell. In the time where we had the unbelievable unbeaten run, and it was, I understood keeping Ampadu and Roden together because that defense and the midfield of Gruev and Kamara, it was watertight. Melier was not seeing any shots, which was great. We was in possession of the ball. Oh, don't laugh, man. Hold on, man. I'm trying to cook here. We was in possession of the ball. We was winning games, and it wasn't all pretty. There was some games where it was tough to watch. But when it wasn't working, Ampadu surely has to go back into midfield. You made Charlie Creswell stay. You made amends. Stick him in. You saw Liam Cooper. It didn't work. Fair. Why not use Charlie Creswell? And then we'd have more variation in the starting lineup, which is obviously another thing. We knew what the team sheet was every week. And it's funny in one of the press conferences, because you never know who's going to start. And, we knew that wasn't true. But what did you think about his inflexibility of just using the squad more, especially the Creswell thing?
Yeah, I find the Cresswell thing almost symptomatic of him really just Farke in terms of just his stubbornness. I mean, you look at that, and as I've mentioned previously, Cage, I know we didn't want to sort of develop on it earlier on, but Ipswich wanting him, Sunderland wanting him, Millwall wanting, and look, it's Millwall, it's Leeds, very very different. I understand that, but there's people who question his quality, his caliber. Well, those clubs wouldn't be after him, and they were after him 100%.
Yeah, yeah,
In
yeah,
the January, we stuck our heels in and said, look, we're not doing it. Okay, fine. But then you've got to play him. You've got to utilize him. You've got to deploy a bit of rotation. And when you've got arguably the best midfield, I'll probably put him up there with Flynn Downs in terms of his position, Ethan Ampadu in that midfield, in that defensive sort of double pivot, put him back in there, and then we would have actually been able to compete, because KG, we didn't compete with any midfield in the post-international break. Watford dominated us, Coventry dominated us, Hull completely dominated us, and we managed to get a win. And that's not even discussing what happened towards the end when we're looking at teams like Southampton. But
and QPR.
QPR, yeah, completely forgot about QPR. Listen, I'm putting Ampadu back in there and Cresswell at the back wouldn't have been an issue for me whatsoever. And he did okay at Millwall, did Cresswell. He came up against a lot of tripe, which the Championship is. Me and you have spoken of this. 2/3 of it's, or probably even more than that percentage-wise, 70-75% of it is garbage. So Charlie Cresswell's come up against these sides before. I think it's an absolute damning and crying shame that Charlie Cresswell has had more opportunities, and he barely had any, but more opportunity with Leeds in the Premier League than he's had this season in the Championship. I don't understand it, but yeah.
And we'll talk about in regards to another one, the stubbornness. I mean, we know he's very stubborn, so there's probably a few examples, but one in particular that kind of hamstrung us around December time was the insistence of playing Jorginho as a striker. Now, Jorginho obviously is not a striker, and look, he's young still, so he may get improve as the years go on. But up till this point, we have not seen any evidence that Jorginho is a natural finisher. I mean, not even close. Most of his goals are when he's attacking from the right or centrally, and he's whipping one in the far corner. He's not an instinctive striker. And that time where he made that 13-minute speech as to why Piroe and Jorginho play the way they play, he kind of made the bed for himself there, because then it was just kind of like, no, I'm right. And it wasn't until the turn of the year where he played Bamford up front and moved Jorginho back, where he finally realized, oh, this actually works better overall. So, I mean, in regards to some of his stubborn decisions, Conor, I mean, listen, every manager is stubborn to a certain extent, but what, we're talking about strikers there. Let's roll it in with Mateo Joseph thing, because I feel he should be serving jail time for the lack of game time that Mateo Joseph has had this season.
Jesus.
I'm serious, mate. He should be brought up on charges, because when you look at the strikers that we've got, as an all-rounder, maybe Piroe is a more accomplished finisher at this stage of his career. But when you're talking about pace, you were talking about all that pressing stuff, you talk about being a menace in the box. Joseph, I think if he played more games, there's no way to prove it. I think he gets more than the 7 or 8 goals Bamford got this season. I genuinely believe it. And when you get to the point where Joseph does so well in the game against Chelsea in the cup, and it wasn't like Chelsea put out their reserve team. They had a pretty good team out there. To then get a Saturday 12:30 kickoff against Huddersfield, where Joseph would have been up for this game, really up for it. We end up drawing it 1-1, and Joseph doesn't even come off the bench. And then when he comes out in the press conferences again, and this is towards his stubbornness, when he's asked about the Bamford, when Bamford once again goes through his lean spell, people are asking about Joseph, and he says people are talking about Joseph and hyping him up when he's only got 1 goal in 15. Zero context behind that comment. Never mind the fact that Joseph only gets 8 minutes here and there. But I thought that was very disingenuous and very dismissive. What do you think in regards to some of the, those kind of decisions that Farke has made this season?
We'll remember as well, KG. That it's a good sort of quote you brought up there with regards to Andy Farke. But he was also the one who said at the start of the season and throughout the season, don't question him when it comes to strikers. Don't do
Yeah.
that, because I used to be a striker. Look at who I used to have in Timu Pukki. He did okay, didn't he, with a wry smile? And I would argue that he's not got the best out of any striker this season, which I think has probably been a failure on his part. Joseph was. You are right when you say jail time. That is, I mean, will he even be at Leeds next season? That's a conversation. If I was Joseph's agent, I'd be definitely looking elsewhere, because the manager clearly doesn't favour him. I don't know why. He's maybe trying to prove a point. I don't really understand it, but I always thought that when Bamford came back in, KG, for Peterborough and all this sort of stuff and got his goal, Farke came out afterwards and was saying, look, he deserves to stay in. He's proven it at this moment in time. So what I got from that is Leeds United and Daniel Farke's philosophy is based on a meritocracy. So if it's based on a meritocracy, why do you get Joseph going and coming up against Disasi and I believe it's Trevor Chalobah, giving them the absolute runaround and scoring 2 goals and looking hungry, tenacious, bags full of quality, bags full of energy, and then dropping in the next game? So it's a complete contradiction, because it's not based on a meritocracy. And I think that's been the biggest irritating factor for me this season, KG, because I've spoken to several people and people say, well, Joseph's not done it. Joseph's not done it. How can he do it? How on earth can he do it when he's brought on really on average per game for around about 8 or 9 minutes? And that's on average. Some games he's been actually, the mick has been taken out of him. He's been brought on for 3 or 4 minutes. There was actually one game where he was brought on in stoppage time when we needed to get back into it. I can't remember. It might have been Preston away. So the management of him has been absolutely shocking. To say clubs were in for him at the start of the season, and once again, KG, we say, no, you're not having him. And then Farke continues to not play them. So what is the point? So, I mean, the only way I would look at keeping this man happy is saying, look, next season you'll be hopefully partnered up front in maybe a little bit of a change of system with another baller in this division. But I'd be giving him the guarantee that he's going to be starting most games for Leeds United, and you're up the pecking order above Bamford and ultimately above Joel Piroe as well, because he is. I love Joseph. I love everything about him, and I think he's got so much to give. And I just have a real sort of feeling that at some point we're going to look back on how we've handled Matteo Joseph and feel some massive regret.
Yeah, and listen, you just said ahead of Bamford. I'm hoping that that rumor of him going in the summer is true.
Yep.
So I'm hoping that it's going to be Joseph. I don't see Piroe leaving now.
No.
I see that if we went up, it's just the trust as well. We talk about Joel Piroe and the way he's been handled as well. Let's talk about that.
Yep.
We know he's not an out and out 9. He's not an out and out 10. He's one of those false 9 kind of characters where he's got to play in a certain position to get the best out of him. And at times this season, and go back and watch the games, people go back, especially early on, this guy will be starting near central midfield, and it reminded me a lot of Bielsa with Rodrigo, where Rodrigo was essentially a left winger, inside forward, stroke striker. And he tried to make him this tenacious run around midfielder. And I always go back to that thing that John Joe Shelby said. He said to Rodrigo on the pitch, why are you running around like this? And he said, because Bielsa wants me to. It reminds me of that in terms of Joel Piroe and the way he was used in regards to that. We had a player that scored 22 goals the previous year and maybe 21 before, I don't know. He's got 13, 14. And even at the time where he's getting maligned by the fan base, he was on 10 goals or something like that. So
Mm.
he was doing all right in considering. And I just feel he got the Joseph treatment as well. We got a 16 million pound asset there coming on for 4 minutes a game for a run of games. That's how much the trust had been broken there, or the belief wasn't in Joe Peru.
Yeah, he seemed to, when Bamford was the favourite, and obviously Bamford was doing quite well, and by his own standards, really. He it did feel, KG, right? He became like the forgotten man, didn't he, Piroe? He'd be
Yeah.
coming on for, once again, 2-3 minutes at points. He'd be coming on for 15-20 minutes if the worst, was coming to the fore, really. But he wasn't getting in games. A lot of it was like for like substitutions, which didn't suit him at all. If Bamford's coming off, then Piroe's replacing him. There's no change in strategy, tactic, or anything like that. It's just a 9 for a 9, and we know Piroe's not a number 9. So it all sort of fell on his shoulders a little bit. And I agree. I think it's not been good management of him. It just hasn't. And even we like Piroe, KG. We like Piroe, but when we were talking at the start of the season about Cameron Archer, and we know what happened there, obviously him going to Sheffield United, but a Cameron Archer type player would have suited this system and Daniel Farke's system so much better. And I just think the handling of our forward players and just the whole makeup of our forward players, when we're looking at Southampton, when we're looking at Leicester, we're looking at the depth up there, and the usage as well of them in key games and at key moments, I think has been handled really poorly, to be honest.
Well, let's stay on that because this was a big thing through the season. And I made the point in January to go get Kiefer Moore, not because I think Kiefer Moore is an outstanding striker and that he'll fire us to Premier League glory one day, but when you looked at the games that we were struggling in, we couldn't break teams down. We didn't have that physical presence up front, especially from set pieces. We know our set piece records, but that's been poor for years, and hopefully they address that this summer. But when I suggested Kiefer Moore, it's because it was something that we just don't have. And I said when he signed for Ipswich, I said we've made a mistake there. He's not probably not going to get 10 goals, but what he does, he gives you a physical presence. I think he ended with a pretty decent tally for Ipswich. In fact, I think he scored more than Bamford come the end of the season, or the same amount. But another point somebody made, and it was a great point. I think it was David Lamb or David Gray. I forget which David it was. Sorry, guys. But they said even if we got Kiefer Moore, he probably wouldn't have played him. And it's a great point because now we have to talk about the timing of the substitutions. I think it's factually correct, isn't it, that we substitute the latest. And when you look at the game time that we had, and this affected us, this goes back to a point I made at the start of the stream. It affected us in regards to the playoff final because now, if he was to bring in Creswell for the final, he's cold. He's got no match fitness. So now he can't put Ampadu in midfield and bring in Cresswell because now he'd get hammered for that. You can't bring in Joseph now because if you're not going to play him during the season, why are you bringing him in for the playoff final now? He hamstrung himself with these decisions, and especially when we went on that absolutely terrible run, not moving Ampadu out of defense back into midfield where he's more comfortable. And the substitutions, Jaden Anthony may as well have not even be here. Joe Gelhardt, I thought he'd left. Man was still on the bench, like just warming it. You know what I mean? And it's like, if you're not going to use them, and maybe he doesn't trust them, and again, that could be a counter for why people want him to stay, because maybe you'll get more players that he can trust in his squad to use earlier.
Mm.
But then why make such an effort to keep those players and keep them around if you're not going to use them? There's been games, just quickly before you take over in this one, there's been games where we've had the hard game on, say, Tuesday, Saturday, then had an easier one, a nicer fixture coming up 3 days later, where it would have been perfect for people like Anthony, James to come back in. And we've gone with the same 11, rolled them back out again.
Completely agree. And we spoke about the Chelsea game. What a lot of people don't remember that Chelsea game was how good Jaden Anthony was, how good he was in that game. I believe he got 2 assists. He was a bit of a difference maker there. And I think you bang on in terms of games sometimes where Somerville off that left-hand side was struggling. And during these packed, these tight 2-3 games over 10-day periods, you need to rotate, and he didn't really rotate. I think he was burnt by that Stoke game away where he tried to utilize a bit of rotation. We got bopped off the park at the Britannia, but still that shouldn't completely deter you away from rotation whatsoever. I'll be honest, KJ, I've never seen anything quite like it in terms of such a horrendous utilization of your bench. I mean, look, we even look at Conor Roberts. You bring in
Yeah,
a Premier League, a Premier League right back, of which everybody was really happy with. You bring it, and he doesn't feature whatsoever. It's completely pointless.
yeah,
Completely pointless. So I completely agree. And I'd get a lot of flack, KG, for Joe Gelhardt, but well, what has he done, Conor? What is it? He didn't do anything at Sunderland. But that's not the point. I mean, he came in to be almost a little and large with Ross Stewart. Ross Stewart got injured, and then obviously Joe Gelhardt had to be that number 9 by himself. He's never done that for 20 games straight. Whatever context needs to be applied there. But Joe Gelhardt in that number 10 position at certain points this season, with his close ball control, his notion to shoot on sight, would have been a
mhm,
really good asset, in my opinion, to use this season. I think he could have been utilised a lot more. And we know Gelhardt's ceiling is high. We've just absolutely killed another year of development for a player who we bought in for £1 million, who was supposed to be the next big thing. Cresswell, again, we've spoken about him to death, and we will continue to speak about him for the foreseeable future. But he can't be that bad with the clubs that were in for him, and he is a good player. He's done it Premier League level for us, and he's looked okay against players like Mikel Antonio. Jadon Anthony, though, you bang on with him. I mean, we knew straight away, didn't we, with the whole Sinisterra news and all this sort of stuff in January, that Jadon Anthony wasn't sticking around at Leeds. And I think Bournemouth made that abundantly clear, probably for the reason that Leeds just are not utilising him whatsoever. So, yeah, the rotation would have been helpful, not just for the players on the bench, KG, but the players on the pitch, who we all know in football, players get niggles, they get
yeah,
injured.
yeah,
I've heard before that some players outside the first 6 or 7 games of the season are just injury prone. They're just knackered. They're dead. And that's why rotation, using your bench, is key. That is exactly what Kieran McKenna did throughout the season so well. And you're quite right to point out as well there, KG. Substitution, utilization. We are in. I think we finished 19th, which is
oh,
shocking.
yeah,
19th.
yeah. And just in regards to that, the whole Jane Anthony thing, I mean, Angus Kinnear tried to say that we were scouting him from July. That's a whole load of BS. Jane Anthony was at the Bournemouth hotel ready to play the next game. I think they were playing Brentford. And it was just a case of us not looking silly. So we needed to leave with something. And we came back with Jadon Anthony. If they were smart, though, they would have brought back a fullback if they had one available. Because I said it at the time, and look, I think people got fooled by Jadon Anthony starting 2 Premier League games out of the 4 that Bournemouth had played. But as just said, Jadon Anthony's coming in. Who is he starting ahead of?
Yeah.
Is it James? No. Is it Gnonto? No. Is it Somerville? Certainly not. So what we did is we swapped out Sinisterra for essentially a 4th winger. Now, listen, I thought Jane Anthony would get more game time than he actually had, in all fairness to him. But we did not handle that situation well at all. Jane Anthony they made it sound like it was the deal that was shaken on. Jane Anthony was literally told, and we've heard stories from Bournemouth. He was told, "Hey, we're sending you to Leeds." You don't do that to a player that's due to play the next game. So we just
I think didn't he say it on his signing video as well? I'm
he
pretty
said
sure
it,
he did.
yeah. It's crazy, isn't it? It just shows you, though, just sometimes how much top brass can try and BS people, because
Yeah.
they tried to make out like we had been scouting him from July. Load of rubbish, man. Jane Anthony said it himself. The Bournemouth hierarchy said it themselves. Leeds wanted to leave with something, essentially. So we give him Jadon Anthony. And I just didn't feel that it was worth it at the time. And when you look at the usage of him this season, it could have been used elsewhere, most definitely. And you mentioned Connor Roberts. You lose Jed Spence for Connor Roberts, and that's a good signing.
Yeah.
If you're going to lose Jed Spence, Connor Roberts, no problem with that championship level. And you'll
No.
probably see Burnley utilize him this season, this upcoming season. But again, not even his Welsh passport give him playing time. Even though I know he was injured for a little bit, but you saw the difference he made, just that natural width on the right. And we did not utilize the width enough. There was times, Connor, in the season, especially after the international break, where we were playing like Jesse Marsh leads.
Yeah.
And no one wants to say it, but we was narrow, very narrow at times. And also that goal we conceded at the back post against Southampton, I think it was. Yeah, it was because it was poor defending for both. If that was Jesse Marsh, he'd have been hammered, absolutely hammered, that there was no one there at the back post.
Yeah, he would have. And you're right. I mean, it comes back to tactical nuance as well, KG. I mean, consistently, a lot of the time, you will get Somerville cutting in, won't you? He inverts a hell of a lot. I think he does that a lot more than he goes down the flank, although he has that ability. But his strongest side is his right side, so he's going to cut in. Willie Gnonto is, I don't think he's really an out-and-out winger as well, to be quite honest with you. He inverts a lot and actually shapes a lot on his left foot. He almost like sort of drifts in into that number 10 space, doesn't he? So you've got yourself a situation where Leeds plays short, sharp passes within a 5-yard radius, backwards, laterally, sometimes forwards, of course, but everything is central. Everything is central, aside from if you'll maybe get, as I say, Somerville, but he is in our entire build-up with Rutter going down that flank, but it's quite rare because he'll cut inside. So the whole shape of the squad is completely central from an offensive point of view. So yeah, I mean, there's no natural width whatsoever. And I think against Southampton, they worked that out pretty well, as we've previously mentioned, KG. No combinations. And I think that was post-international break. I think there was such a lack of combination, overlaps, underlaps with these fullbacks and these wingers. I thought that was cut off. And we just seemed so easy to defend against with no answers. But the answers, quite rightly so, could have been off the bench. I mean, even how Conor, look, like you've quite rightly said, KG, that passion merchants in our fan base will have loved how he spoke. But you genuinely saw, I felt you saw a boy there who really tried to immerse himself with the club and the fans, and he wanted to be involved. He really wanted to be involved, and I thought he spoke really, really well. And I just think you've just not used that experience whatsoever, because as a footballer, KG, you will know his motivation levels will have gone down, 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 because the manager's just not using him, and he's seeing him as just a throwaway really, and in putting him on in that game. And then what did he do? He went to a back three against Southampton right at the end, and then he put Archie centre back, right centre back, and then Conor Roberts as almost like a wing back as a Hail Mary. It summarizes it up really, doesn't it?
Yeah, and we'll stick off Farke. I'm just going to get through the super chats because one does kind of go into the next thing in regards to Farke. Bobby here saying, "Good to see you two together again." Pause. Fair enough. Farke style of football is slow and boring. It is very laborious. Definitely will say that. Prosa with a super sticker. Thank you for that. And David Lamb here saying, "Here's a question: would the other three main manager would have got promotion under the same circumstances of Farke?" I think so. And that leads me to this one in regards to Daniel Farke, because obviously I feel he's going to be here next season, although we did see Piroe in that final look very perturbed, to say the least. And he failed twice, first of all, automatically. And I think that was another thing that was a bit annoying from what he kept saying in terms of that we was always chasing. That's just not true, because we went top. So if we had never reached the top two, or were having trouble staying in there because that we just couldn't overthrow Leicester and Ipswich, I can understand that kind of sentiment, but we actually were in the top two. It's just that once we got to the top two, that's when it all went funky, like so many times with the football club. You know what I mean? It was cool though, wasn't it? That unbeaten run, we was chasing. And I remember, because I was ill and I couldn't do a match reaction, but I think we beat Watford, didn't we? It was that game where we went top. And
was it Watford or Millwall?
Was it Millwall?
Might have been Millwall. Yeah,
one of the two. Yeah, but we go top, and then from there, that's when the pressure's on us.
Yeah.
And we saw what happened there. So I think all that thing he kept saying in regards to we was always chasing. He wanted more experience, like you mentioned before, in regards to the transfer market. There was no sign of him going for that besides Conor Roberts. But going forward, now we mentioned we could lose some of our jewels, which is obvious because some of them should be playing at a higher level. But if he is to recruit right, and I mean get the proper players in, get another right back in, get another left back in, we will lose a few players, but he won't have the same talent, but he might have a more complete squad. Are you keeping Daniel Farke going into next season?
I mentioned on a show yesterday that I'm very 50-50 with him. Very 50-50, KG. I could be convinced either way, but the reason I'm siding with him at this moment in time is because I've said that the stipulation is if we can get a top coach at this level who is up and coming, upward trajectory and stuff, I would definitely probably look to maneuver a little bit. Because I then think to myself, well, if you're a top coach, then you've probably got more. If we are to get to the Premier League, and that is the long-term vision, you've probably got more of an upwards, a higher ceiling. We've seen Daniel Farke at Premier League level twice, and we've seen what happens there. A lot of fans will say, look, he's not been backed. Okay, well, we can't answer that. it's all a spoof scenario at this moment in time. We'll have to wait and see. But yes, I would stick with him, but he'd be on a very, very short leash. It is. We have to take into consideration a lot of the signings did come in very late at the end of this. At the end of the window, he did have to go through a lot of tricky situations. Obviously, 15 players went out, didn't they? I don't think he expected that with the previous ownership, who just dudded up a lot of the contracts. And obviously wasn't in from the very start, was he, with a takeover that happened? So they're not excuses whatsoever. I understand everybody in the chat is probably Farke out, which is interesting. I'd question you guys, and me and Cage have spoken about this off air, to maybe give us an alternative name who, the 49ers maybe would pivot to. I think that's probably the more poignant question. But yeah, mate, I probably would stick with him. But the big stipulation would be for me, if a top coach became available at this level, there's a conversation there to be had, I think.
Yeah, I mean, like David saying, give ourselves a proper chance next season. But John also says, what is the point of a manager who you have on a short leash? And I do understand that. But I'm the same. I think that you have to be careful at championship level, especially because once you let go of a Farke, if you then go on that championship merry-go-round with some of those names that are just used and recycled, that's when it gets a bit dangerous. Now, if you're saying a Steve Cooper wants to come, who has achieved promotion with a club like Leeds in Forest, where there's been big expectations, many managers before him have failed, he's got a good style of football, then yes, I'm doing it. It's a really weird thing with me with Daniel Farke, in that, yeah, he's stubborn and he annoys me. Does he do better next season? Now, listen, Luton, Burnley, Sheffield United will reshape their teams, but nowhere is that league as tough as it will be this season. I genuinely think that if we get our recruitment right, we'll finish in the top two.
KG, can I just put a bit of a thing there? I think as well, what I would say is we have to, mate, because the pressure on that third season with the parachute payments being reduced again,
Yeah,
but also with the 3 that have gone up this season, we now have this next season where we have a lower standard in the division. If we don't go up this season, we then go into a third season where one of those 3, maybe that 3 doesn't come down, but maybe 1, 2 of those 3, or maybe other teams in the Premier League come down. That third season in the Championship is going to be probably the most difficult, because parachute payments will have gone, will be our third season in the Championship, and the caliber and standard of the division will be much higher than it was the season before, of which we have to go up. So I think that there is so much pressure on this season for me. Sorry, I just had to say that.
No, that's absolutely fine, because, and going along those lines, you end up being Norwich and West Brom, and we've seen them. They're solid championship outfits, yes, of course, but you can see the gulf in quality between us, Southampton, and them too, and that comes from years of not going up. You have to lose your better players, you have to recruit lesser players, and you just become another championship club. I think Stoke are now looking to rebuild. We saw them grab Victor Johansson very quickly.
Yep.
I would like to see us do some business quickly as well. Some people say Mark Robbins there. I mean, what do you think of him from Coventry?
Not for me.
No.
No. Coventry's a bit of a different standard to Leeds. I think he's a good coach. He's a good coach. And maybe that was a lot of the criteria I just put then. But believe it or not, I'm sort of in that bracket of there are definitely better coaches even in the Championship right now.
Yeah, I'm only saying it because it came up in the chat a lot. But what I'd also say as well is even Farke himself realized this season just the differences between Norwich and Leeds. Like, he will have had an idea before he took the job, but as we heard him say through many conferences, this club is very big. Everyone jumps on everything. It's very emotional, very passionate. I think even he didn't have a clue of just how magnified everything gets with this football club, which is why he went on long tirades in regards to Joseph, Piroe, Gnonto, rutter positions and things like that. Even he didn't have a clue. So you do need somebody with a big personality. And to be fair to him, he may be stubborn. He does have a big personality, because he looks like, I am the man for the job. And even after the playoff final loss, he was still talking like, I am still the man to do this. But he needs to get recruitment right and get a squad in that he trusts, because he cannot run this back the way he did this season. No way.
No, he can't. And it'd be interesting as well to see if you mentioned Stevie Cooper there. I wonder if one of the demoted teams is going to go take a pick on him, take a chance on him. It'll be interesting to see how quickly he gets back into management. I think he's mentioned that he wants a Premier League job, but the longer you're out the game, we know that, KG, don't we? It gets harder and harder and harder, and that's why we see all these pundits get on TV just twerking for a job.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I wonder if a top sort of 6 club would look at someone like Stevie Cooper. It'd be interesting to see that. But I see a lot of people in the chat saying Liam Rosenior. Probably not for me. I don't think. But I like Liam Rosenior as a coach. But
Yeah,
there's a lot of that whole side was extremely talented, and maybe there's a bit of criticism there that he didn't get it into the top 6. But yeah, it's not our job, is it, KG? It's not our job to be thinking of the names.
Yeah, it's not our job. But like Jamie says here, and this again, I'm not trying to hammer him, but he did this when we went on the bad run. And you know what? It was ever since we went on the bad run where he started to talk himself up and the team, and then we just deliver an absolute goose egg in the game. But he was talking a lot in regards to I am the man for the job. I like it when it gets tough. Remember that one, Conor? I like it when it gets tough. I get excited when it gets tough.
How did that go?
Yeah, he does. He talks it up, doesn't he? And that's what we need less of next season for me, because even, we have to watch these press conferences to do previews. Even I was getting sick of listening to him. And if I had the choice, I wouldn't have listened to him in the end.
Well, it's interesting how you mentioned as well, a certain previous manager used to play narrow football, and there were some similarities there, but a previous manager used to talk a lot as well, and there wasn't any sort of slack given to him, was there? So yeah, Farke's proven a little bit more, obviously, but I agree with you, mate. When it's not going well, I am a little bit sick of hearing these sort of back pocket excuses that are rolled out of press conferences.
Yeah. So look, there's still stuff to do at this point in time when we record this. There's still the retained list to come. I've still got my keep sell bench video as well, which I'm going to give a little bit more thought to. That'll probably come in the next couple of days, people. But it's just going to be a big summer, and Leeds have got to seize this summer. We can be disappointed about this season gone now, but it's now about looking to the future, looking for solutions for the problems now, and see where we go next summer.
It is, mate. It 100% is, and I'm interested to see your keep sell list. I did mine today. Completely forgot that Liam Cooper's ran out of his contract's expired. So yeah, I apologise to people who've maybe seen that and thought, Conor, you got that one wrong. But yeah, mate, my list was, I think, I had about 8 or 9 who had keep. So yeah, there's a lot going on there, but I think there's more churn than people think. I really do.
Yeah, because obviously there's things that we would like to see, like people stay out, I would assume. But it's not down to us; it's down to the play. Because what a lot of people need to understand is it's the grind of the championship. A lot of these players that probably are going to have interest elsewhere won't want to do this again. They will want to go to either a league where it's a top league or the Premier League, and they're not looking forward to going Plymouth again.
No.
It's a grind for us as fans. We don't want to do this again. Well, most of us. I had one guy saying the championship is more fun. Unbelievable. But yeah, don't get me started on that. But as fans, you think of it and you go, not this again. Just think of it as players. They're thinking, I could be going to Anfield this week. Instead I'm going Oxford United. So especially if they're not at this level.
Forgot about Oxford.
Yeah. Conor, it's not just them, it's Derby. We're going to be reintroduced to them again. You know what I mean? It's going to be mad. It's going to be mad.
It is, mate. It's good. Yeah, it is. And we've just we've just spoken about there. It's such a pressure cooker now, and this whole look, I'll say something which might be quite controversial, but there's unfortunately a lot of this fan base who a lot of them are brilliant, but a lot of them unfortunately have a bit of a loser mentality, and I think that's been bred from how many years disappointment we've had. 2 decades nearly, aside from 3 years. So I understand it, but staying in the Championship as opposed to the Premier League is the most ridiculous thing that you could ever hear. Listen, the 49ers, literally, we all know this, would have turned the keys on a stadium expansion probably immediately. Would have gone up with serious capital, would have been able to pay that money back as well pretty quickly, I'd imagine. The player sort of recruitment would have been so exciting. Would have been able to be looking at top names instead of just the names that we're looking at now. The Premier League is, look, we might go up there and we might get tonked at some points, and every club does, but getting back to the Premier League is prosperity. There's hope there. You do not want to stay in this division, as me and KG, for year upon year upon year, because listen, I was there in 05 and 06 when we got tonked by Ashley Young's Watford.
Yeah.
I remember the next year was saying, "Oh, we're going straight back up," and then it started to go downhill. I'm not saying that will happen, but just be careful what you wish
I
for.
swear we got relegated the year after.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was, mate. I blanked. I've been to the final 3 times now, mate, and we haven't scored a goal.
Awesome. Awesome record.
So there you go.
Oh my
Yeah.
Lord.
It was
Yeah.
actually
Yeah.
it was actually quite similar to the Doncaster game, actually. You know, they
Yeah.
were quite decent up front those days. I think Paul
I
Yates
didn't think we was
Paul
going to
Yates,
beat Doncaster. I've said on here before. I felt Doncaster were a better footballing team
they
that year,
were.
and it was mostly to do with Coppinger. Remember
Coppinger,
him?
yeah. Yeah, James
He was the
Coppinger.
League One. He was unbelievable.
Yeah, yeah, and they battered us that game. We couldn't get through their back 4-5, and yeah, it was a similar game to be honest. But yeah, oh man, it's trying, Cage, isn't it? It's trying.
Carlos says, "Don't go to finals anymore, Conor, for the Jesus."
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, but unfortunately, Carlos, it's as Cage you'll know, and a lot of you OGs will know. It's been before my time. It's not just the last 3 finals. It's the last 6, 7.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, listen, we're gonna wrap up now, people. I hope you've enjoyed this. Like I say, keep sell bench is coming soon, and listen, it's going to be different. Obviously, if we went to the Premier League, the video is going to look very different compared to playing keep. You know what I'm saying? It's
Yeah.
going to look very different. That's just the way it is. You have to do what is right for the division you're in. So hopefully, you guys will join me for that. And just listen, thank you, Conor, for coming on. It's been a long time coming, and it was worth it. I really enjoyed this one today.
Yeah, it's been lovely, mate. And just for you guys as well, KG's going to be coming on One Leeds tomorrow as well, and we're going to be chatting even more Leeds United. So if you want even more therapy, KG, I don't know how I'm going to design my show, to be honest, because I think we've covered everything. But if you want more of Conor and KG, we'll be back tomorrow on mine at about 7 p.m. So make sure you come on over to see our two faces again together, because it's been lovely.
Yeah. Okay. Just a couple of super chats before we go. Isaac, any chance of the 49ers keeping our top players next season? I think if we do, we're ending as champions, especially with the quality in the league. And it's all up in the air, isn't it, Isaac? We don't know. We literally do not know. And I'm even looking to a Dan James, who I think is a definite keep. I think, spoiler alert. But is there a lower end Premier League team that's looking at him thinking, I think we could get a tune out of him? I don't know. So we'll have to wait. Stay tuned for the summer for all the transfer videos and everything else like that. I'm sure we'll get more info. Arinda saying, even if the 49ers make the correct transfers this summer, improve the squad, my fear is that Farke won't utilize it. Yeah, and that's fair from all the points that we've made today. But listen, people, that is it, people, for the video. Once again, thank you, Conor. Thank you for joining. Please like the video before you exit, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace out.